This one, sent to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com, is from a wrestler requesting anonymity. Recently, I was told by someone...
Hey, depending on what company he's working for, he's probably already got it.
Recently, I was told by someone that the art of calling a match on the fly is bullshit. That it doesn't exist anymore.
What?
Personally, I disagree for many reasons and think it is an important part of what we do today. I'm curious where you stand on this, Jim, and your thoughts on today's wrestlers being able to call a match on the fly. Is it bullshit and pointless to learn nowadays?
I don't even know what to say. What moron masquerading as a pro wrestler is this guy talking to that he would hear that statement uttered from somebody that calls himself a wrestler? Oh, it's bullshit to call it in the ring. That's, oh God, is that how far that we've come that guys now don't even recognize when they have become good and experienced and qualified at their craft? That's what they do. Is it just that nobody's good enough anymore to do that? And so people think, well, this is not something we should do because it doesn't work out because they don't know how to do it? Fuck. Besides television, yes, in television, especially with limited time constraints, you got to be boom, boom, boom and get your stuff in the time you have, or you've got to make sure that you hit certain parameters. If there's a camera shot of something that needs to go on, whatever the fuck, there's a little more preparation, but you're not always going to be on television. Most wrestlers may not ever be on television. You got to go out in the buildings, in a house show or a spot show or a live event. And you mean to tell me that these guys are going to sit down for a fucking live event in front of 500 people and not only talk about shit and go over shit and plan shit for what they're going to, a match in front of 500 or 1,000 people, that they're going to spend hours over that, but also they're going to take the chance of, well, maybe those 500 or 1,000 people might not like what we worked out and we're going to have to change up in midstream. But they're going to put that much time and effort into a spot show match or a regular live event match in front of hardly any people instead of going out and just working and knowing what to do and being a qualified enough professional that you can do 12 or 15 minutes without having to sit down and talk about it for hours. I mean, I know I've said this before. It used to, the whole time thing has been inverted. I've seen Flair and Steamboat talk for 90 seconds and work for 45 minutes. Now you see guys talk for 45 minutes to work for 90 seconds. So no, I don't know what maniac he's talking to, but no, that's like saying I'm a good enough doctor right now. If I never learn how to do surgery and I don't actually graduate and get the diploma, I can still cure colds and fucking bunions. But no, if you're a wrestler that can't call a match with anybody you work with in the ring from start to finish, after having never spoken to them or sometimes even met them, then you got work to do, son. That's all it is. You're just not good enough yet.
When you're training guys, especially when I get OVW, you had house shows, you had places to send guys.
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like a silly question. Is there a way to teach guys how to read the room and how to go with the room? And are there guys that just can never do it?
Well, the way that guys learn how to read the room is when they're out there in that room and that room doesn't give a shit that they're there. And hopefully they're in with somebody else is, okay, why don't we try this? Because if you're just with two green guys, they're going to do what they planned and, it's going to either suck or it's not. But if one guy's green, but one guy's got a little bit more experience and he starts chiming in and then they switch up something, or sometimes you just do something by accident and it gets a response, then it's just repetition and experience and being in the ring with guys that know more. And that's how it's not like, yeah, you can critique a match afterwards and you go, well, you should have fired up more here, or don't die when you sell, or this and that and the other thing. But it's actually doing it, and more importantly, doing it with somebody on top of you at the time that can tell you how to do it better. That's why it's so important for younger guys being pushed not to be working with guys of the same age and experience level, but being able to work with more experienced guys, even if they're lesser names. If you've got a guy that's been in the business 15 years, but he's never really been anywhere, that's the kind of guy you want on television putting over the younger guys that you've got that have a great upside and need to be helped to the next level, because they know at least what they're doing. They just didn't make it as stars themselves. That's why they called them carpenter, because they'll build your house. Any jackass can kick a barn down, but takes carpenter to build one. So again, I don't know what this guy's probably talking to one of the indie-rific, clowns that thinks that, well, that's what those guys did back in those days when a lot of people watched this shit and everybody made money by earning it instead of getting a guaranteed contract from a billionaire. We don't want to go back to those days.
Let me ask you this, though, because there are a lot of matches that you can watch in AEW, and you can maybe tell that a lot of this was thought out in advance, pre-planned, pre-thought out, preconceived, I guess we should say. Where is the line? Eddie Graham used to give guys really long, intricate finishes. So obviously they're not calling anything there. You're just doing what you're told. Where do you think is the line in terms of what you should call and what you should plan out in advance?
Well, but
either a booker telling you or you and your opponent talking.
Well, here's one thing. When Eddie Graham gave involved finishes, that was the moves and things he wanted done to plant the seed in the fans' minds of how that the stipulation at the show next week will subvert any effort that the heel makes to cheat like he did this week or whatever. But he wasn't telling the guys how to perform those finishes. When you're making a comeback and you're drop kicking or you're doing this or that or whatever, your body language and your facials tells whether you're feeling triumphant or you're feeling excited or whether you're fighting from underneath or whether it's a last-ditch effort or you've gotten your second wind or whether the people are going to be with you or not. And those were the things, the intangibles that the top stars that Eddie Graham booked would perform while they were doing his finishes. And the reason why that they were able to perform them that way was because he booked guys that knew how to do that shit. That's why the Florida talent was some of the best in the world, because even though it wasn't the biggest territory, it's a great place to live and you could make good money, but you could work for Eddie Graham and learn from a genius. But he also looked for guys that had the potential to be stars and had the intangible that made fans want to watch them. That's why he produced Dusty Rhodes and Jack Briscoe and aided in Bill Watts and Kevin Sullivan, so many other blah, blah, blah. But again, the booker does not determine the match. I see a lot of fans saying, well, they booked that match poorly for him to do a 2-minute headlock. Well, the booker didn't know they were going to do a headlock at all. The booker gives you the finish, maybe a spot or two in the match that needs to correlate to the finish or make sense in the end. And then it's like a football coach and players. You let the players run the play, as Dutch Mantel would say. So how that match got to the point where the booker could take over and tell them how to finish it to bring people back, and whether it was good or not, that was up to the wrestlers. And then having said those two things, you say the line, there is no line in terms of how much that the booker should tell the wrestler to do in the match or how much the wrestler should have called to do it on his own, because it depends on every single match, and personality and predicament and situation is different. But I guess above all, the booker is in charge of the tone of everything and the flavor of everything. And he needs to know not to have every match look the same, or elsewise the people get burnt out. He needs to know to start off with the wrestling and end with the violence. He needs to know the the basic structure of everything and how everybody's going to fit in his universe. Are you opening match? Are you middle card? Are you top guy? How should this guy sell for you? He should sell for you different depending on how I'm booking you. Things like that. And then you give the guys the scoop, the poop, the plays, and let them run it. And it's a combined effort. Did I answer all of your questions? That was about a 16-parter.
I think so. And as I said before, some of the matches we see, it's not a surprising thing to hear that they're not calling the matches in the ring and listening to the room, that they have a pre-planned match you're going to the ring with.
And that's, sometimes that's great. And sometimes it stinks. We've also said many times, and everybody's been in the wrestling business or been a wrestling fan for years and has gone to different areas, knows this. Crowds are different. Fans are different. In the territories, they were taught to accept different styles of product depending on what their local promotion was. But some cases, even then, in the territory, some towns, Harlan, Kentucky didn't want to see the babyface shine worth shit. You could shine the babyface all night, the Rock and Roll Express, whatever. They'd sit on their hands. Soon as you took over and got the heat, then they got into the match because they wanted to be mad. They wanted to yell. They wanted to cuss at somebody. And then the more heat you got, the more they'd get into it. And then if you could get by with not getting somebody in the ring with a fucking knife, when the babyface blew their comeback, then they were out of the control because now there's a reason for them to cheer the babyface beating the heel up. We just made them mad 10 minutes ago. Other places, they wanted to see the fucking baby faces already just run roughshod through the heels. They wanted to see the shine like crazy. And it was just different towns had different crowds and different things that they liked. And if you couldn't shorten up one thing, lengthen another thing, adapt, whatever, just say, fuck, these people don't want to see this shit, so let's fucking get to the meat of the matter and get out of here so as let the other guys have a chance later on, whatever the case. A lot of towns were different, and now guys just figure, well, this will be a good match in my head, but they haven't asked the people that have to watch it whether it's going to be any good.